All righty. So for the sake of time, we can go ahead and get started. Thanks everyone for being here. We are excited today to host Eric Beardmore with Consolidated Electrical Distributors. And he's going to share with you about a little bit more about their company and insights into the recruiting process. So Consolidated Electrical Distributors, CED. CED is one of the largest electrical distributors in the country, and they have over 700 locations. They serve residential, commercial, industrial, and solar industries. And I'm sure Eric can tell you a lot more about their company. And a little bit about Eric, our guest today. So Eric was hired into CED's management training program in June of 2015, following his graduation from Purdue University. He completed training assignments at 3 Chicago locations before being named the manager of CED's Naperville location in January of 2018. During his time in Naperville, he focused on growing their customer base and profitability while adding to and improving the team. This fall, Eric is transitioning into a full-time recruiting role, covering their Lakeshore division with 23 locations. Oh, is my sound going? Oh, I feel a little echoey. Okay, I think I'm good. Okay. His focus is on identifying future leaders for their management training program, as well as entrepreneurial-minded individuals for their internships. Eric also assists locations with hiring key personnel and mentoring trainees. Eric is excited to serve CED in a new way during a time where they are investing so much into their people and their business. So thanks, Eric, for being here. We are excited.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's been fun. North Central has actually been a customer of our Naperville location for many, many years, buying lighting products primarily and working with your electricians and maintenance groups. But we've really only recently gotten on the recruiting scene here in the last few years. And so it's been one of the schools that I've been covering, and I'll be continuing to cover it in my new role. So we'll go ahead and get started here. I'm really excited to chat with everybody. Recruiting season is officially started this week. This is my second event of the week, and I'm not only hiring for some positions at some of our individual locations, but primarily for our management and sales training programs and for our internships. So we'll go ahead and get started. I'll tell you a little bit about CED first as we get started here on the first slide. So just a little bit about us. We're probably a company that you have not heard of, but we've been around for a while. We were founded in 1957, and we sell electrical supplies. So we're a wholesaler. We don't make any of our own products. And so it's a unique industry. Sorry, maybe not a unique industry because there are others like this, but what's both the blessing and the curse of the industry is that products that we sell are very similar to our competition. I oftentimes compare it to grocery stores, right? You don't just go to Walmart to buy your eggs because they're the only place in the state of Illinois where you could get eggs, right? You could probably get those at a gas station if you want. So we have to find different ways to differentiate from a service standpoint. But we sell electrical supplies. That's everything from light bulbs and light fixtures to copper wire switches and outlets, piping, power distribution panels, circuit breakers, and fuses, anything that's going through buildings. So our products are in your home, your apartment, your dorm, your classroom, anywhere. So we've been around for a while, and we've grown through a couple of locations in the San Francisco Bay Area and across the country. We now have over 700 locations, and we're in all 50 states. We do a little over $5 billion annually in revenue with about 7,500 employees. What really makes us special compared to our big competition is that we're a privately held company. We're the largest in our industry, and we operate off of a very decentralized business model. What that means is that we allow the decision-making abilities to be left for the individual business units. So we call our business units profit centers, and each location has a manager, and he or she gets to really run that as a small business. Most of our locations have fewer than 10 employees, and they decide their customer base, how they price items, what they stock, do they need more delivery vehicles, and how they run that business. So that's sort of our secret sauce, is that we truly believe that over time, our decentralized model will outperform our more centralized competitors because nobody knows the market and the customer more than the people that are actually living and working there. So our tagline is service, integrity, and reliability, and we do that in every part of our business. So today I'm going to talk about sort of the 4 key elements of the recruiting process. I'm going to talk mostly from what you should be concerned about as a student, as somebody looking for a job. And I'm not, there's a lot of different ways to go about this. This is just the sort of that I felt it was best to present. So we'll first talk about the resume, and then the finding us and finding you. That's more of a selecting what companies, but also a little bit of insight into how we look for candidates. And followed by that, we'll talk about career fair and elevator pitch in there, just as that's sort of part of the career fair. But I won't dive too deep into that just for time's sake. And then communication and follow up. So we'll go ahead and get started first talking about the resume. So I'd like to take a step back and sort of think to yourself, what is the purpose of a resume? It's something that we always are talking about. You maybe even had one in high school. You've probably had to do it for a class. Certainly the people at your career center are there as a resource for you. But what is the purpose of a resume? So from a recruiter standpoint, I'll say, I put providing concise and substantive information. Those are terms that I think are really important to remember. Your resume should be one page. I can't imagine there's anybody, in undergraduate that's got just so much experience that is so relevant that they need more than one page. So you have to find a way to put all that information into a relatively small space, but also explain what's going on. Remember, it's a professional document. It's not a creative design board, but it's something that should be easily readable, and it tells your story. So when we look at a resume, we say, okay, what is this student about? What are his or her interests from a professional standpoint? And what are you doing to work towards that? So these are the 5 most critical pieces of a resume. As a recruiter, I look through thousands of resumes a year. That's for a lot of positions. It's everything from our delivery drivers and our warehouse people to salespeople, management trainees, a lot of college students in there. These are the 5 things that anybody should be able to see in your resume in about 7 seconds. If we can't find this information in your resume clearly within 7 to 10 seconds, it makes the process a lot harder. These are the things that you should have at the very top of your resume. I see sometimes people like to sort of scatter these around, but these are what you really need to make sure you have, because this is how we really qualify someone. First of all, your first and last name. We don't need your middle name. A lot of people like to put their middle name, or sometimes people have 2 middle names. Like, just keep it short. It helps us to see who the candidate is, and when we're doing lists or doing spreadsheets with our candidates, it makes it a lot easier. Your contact information. I've seen some resumes recently that don't have a phone number on there. And I don't think you need your street address. Sometimes people teach you to do that. I'm not going to come visit you. I'm not going to write you a letter. So really that email and that cell phone, those are the ways that people are going to get a hold of you. So think about it. You post your resume on Handshake or Indeed or another platform perhaps, and how would somebody get a hold of you? If that information is not on there, it becomes extremely difficult. And we just don't have enough time to try to really dig and look you up. So make sure that cell phone is on there. In whatever email address you put on there, sometimes students have a personal email, sometimes have a school email, or both. I typically find that people, and this isn't just North Central specific, but people tend to neglect one of those. So whatever email you feel is the best to reach you on, the one that you have on your phone and on your computer, that should be the one that's on there. Your objective. The objective is a tough section of the resume, I will admit. You can sort of be too specific at times. You can sort of be too broad at times. And so that's an area I would really encourage you to work with fellow students, teachers, mentors, the Career Center to really refine that. But what I'm looking for there is, okay, if we have somebody who's an accounting major, we're primarily looking for business-minded people with business experience. If they're an accounting student and I see that they have a desire to sit for the CPA exam next year, that's not going to be a candidate that I'm interested in. But I want to be respectful of both my time and the candidates. So if I see that they have a good resume and they don't have that on there, I might reach out to them and say, hey, would you be interested in our management training program? And then just for them to tell me, oh, I really want to do the CPA track, which is totally fine. I just don't have an opportunity that would be a good fit for that individual. So the objective, it is one of the more challenging parts of a resume, but talk about, I'm interested in a sales or management position. Don't, just that should be what you want to do out of your internship or your full time. Your major, that's really important. Don't like hide that at the bottom. Make that clear. The GPA, I really like seeing that on the resume. There's a lot of mixed opinions on that out there. I've noticed, I've only been doing this for about 5 years, but I've noticed a shift, particularly in the last 2 years, of fewer GPAs being on there. That doesn't make sense to me when people have really good GPAs, especially because I typically when I don't see a GPA, I feel like they're trying to hide that GPA. I'm going to ask it anyway. We're not really super concerned about GPA, but if you have a 2.5 or a 2.6, it's probably not going to be somebody that we pursue. It's more of just all these 5 things are sort of things I'm mentally checking off lists. Okay, who are they? How do I get a hold of them? What are they sort of looking to do with their career or their internship? What's their major? And then do they qualify from a GPA standpoint? So make sure you work to get that GPA a 3.0 or above, and that should keep you in contention for a lot of jobs. So let's look a little bit deeper into what we're looking for. So this is, again, I'm trying not to spend too much time on this, but there's some things that I see a lot of people do wrong, and I want to make sure that you focus on the right things. So for your content, remember, you need to make it very clear. I think your 3 categories should be your education, your professional experience, and then their activities. So, you want those to be as tied into what you're looking for from a job standpoint as possible. Make sure all those are clear. We need to know where you go to school, what your major is, where you've worked. Make sure you include who you work for and what location. It is interesting to sort of see where people have worked. And then also the dates of employment. Don't make it a mystery, how long you worked there or when you worked there. Where I find that most students struggle on the resume is actually selling themselves short. Talk about your specific job duties, but make sure you have a full sentence. Don't say things like, one of my favorites I'll see is completed various tasks. Okay, well, most of us do various tasks in whatever job we have, but make sure you talk specifically about what you do. It's important to see that you're developing skills and different professional things in your internships when you're looking for a full-time position. So make sure you talk about, okay, we know you answered the phone and helped customers and worked on things for your manager, but what did you actually do? Make sure you're talking about specifics like numbers. Did you cold call 30 customers a week? Did you do 5 sales calls? Did you help out X amount of clients? Be specific so we can see, wow, this person really did a lot, because it is clear when you ask a question or two and you say, oh, tell me about the sales experience you had, when you put was exposed to sales processes, and then you tell me, oh yeah, I just went on a sales call once with my mentor and that was it, right? Sort of, you want to make sure you have that substance to it. Really important to mention increased responsibilities, promotions, any accolades that you might get. And this isn't any job. If you are a freshman or a sophomore and you're working at Jimmy John's, that's great. But did you train people? That's one of those things that a lot of people have jobs in college, whether it's working in the cafeteria, whether it's working at a gas station. People have jobs, and what's important to that is, did you do more than show up 5 minutes late and clock out 5 minutes early and do sort of a mediocre job, right? What did you actually do to show your worth? So if you were promoted, if you were, had responsibilities of opening or closing or managing people, I've talked to students that don't include that. I know I spoke with a young lady at a university that was working in a restaurant, and she was a waitress, and she just put, serve customers. And I started talking to her and was asking more specifics. Well, it turned out she had been promoted to lead waitress, didn't put it on her resume. And she also received an award for the highest sales increase and didn't have that on her resume. Those are things that that change it from an average college job into, wow, this is somebody who is looking for success in everything that they're doing. So again, you want that detail, but in a concise manner. Don't write a big paragraph or 10 bullet points about, how you worked at Top Golf, but, talk about those things that really matter. I say, tell us who you are without telling us who you are. And what I mean by that is, we don't need a paragraph summary of who you are and what you do. Let us see your skills and interests through your work experience, through your clubs and activities that you do on campus. And that should really tell the story. The resume is just sort of a qualifier to say, is this an individual that might be a good fit for our position? You don't get hired off a resume. Everybody knows that. But it sort of gives us an idea. Is this somebody that we'd like to have a conversation with, learn a little bit more? It sort of just gives us a basic introduction to this person. Remember, substance over style. Some people try to do cute things with their resume, but most important is making sure you talk about what you did. And you got to get your resume proofread at least once a semester. And don't just have it be your roommate. Take it to a professional, whether it's somebody you've worked with in the past, the career center. I did that a lot when I was in college, and it's very evident when people have done that or when they have not done that at all, when they sort of threw it together the night before the career fair. So preparation is very important. So we'll go to the next one. This is what to avoid, okay? So some people like to say a professional summary instead of like an objective. I find that those are done correct about 25% of the time. And I have this further down the list, avoid passionate, motivated, hardworking, driven, blah, blah, blah. Those make me roll my eyes when I see them on a resume. Those are things we expect out of a college student who's looking to get their first real job, right? So one of the things that turns me off when I see a resume is when you spend 3 lines talking about how you are just cliche things, right? If you are someone who is extremely hardworking, show that because you have a job and you have a good GPA and you're part of a club, right? Those are just words. They don't mean anything unless you back it up again, talking about the substance of your resume. So be careful on that. I know there are some career centers that encourage that. I'm not exactly sure how North Central feels about it, but just from my experience, an objective or a brief 2-sentence professional summary is fine, but a paragraph about yourself, that's more getting into the elevator pitch portion of this. So please avoid the colors or the designs, no bubbles or circles. A lot of times we scan in resumes, and I've had times where like a resume gets scanned in and it's like all dark and it's unreadable. So be very careful about that. I do hear students say, well, I wanted to be unique or stick out. I say boring is best, and maybe I'm just a boring person. But when it comes to the resume, remember, it's all about what information you're communicating. And I find more often than not that people that have lots of fancy designs and sort of irregular formats, 2 things that usually happen. Number one, it's more difficult to find information because they're in different spots. But number 2, a lot of times I find that they're compensating for a lack of substance to the resume. So be careful on that. There are probably some ways to do it right, but most of the time that's not the case. So make sure you avoid having too much white space. Sometimes that's because people are selling themselves short or because their font is too small. If you have lots of white space, trust me, when I look through resume after resume after resume, when one pops up that has like a lot of white space, instantly you're thinking, wow, this person probably hasn't done a whole lot. And I primarily hire juniors and seniors. And so at that point, you've had plenty of time to develop experience and be involved on campus. So make sure you're conscious of that. Again, don't sell yourself short. There's a lot of jobs out there, like I said, just college jobs. If you're working at McDonald's or Chick-fil-A, talk about the things that you did to add value. Yes, you served customers and you cooked food or whatever, but like, what did you do to make that business better and make yourself an above average employee? We'll go to the next one here. So finding us and finding you. We talked about the resume, and that's a big part of this. But what I'm talking about here is how do you find a company that you might want to work for? And then on the other side, how might we reach out to you? So I find that, so for our company, we're not a household name. You probably hadn't heard of us before today, and that's fine. I never heard about CED until I got a call from a recruiter, 6 years ago or so, and that's totally fine. But make sure you're uploaded and actively using Handshake or whatever platform your school uses. Employers do look for people that way, and you are at a massive disadvantage if your resume is not updated on there. Every fall, I will see people that they haven't put what they did over the summer on there, and that, especially if you're a junior, that makes a big difference. Or even if you're a senior, because maybe we say, wow, this person's a senior, but they've never had any internship experience. Of course, this is I know how COVID has changed some things. I know some people might have lost internships, but traditionally speaking, making sure by September 1st and by January 15th of every semester, you should have that uploaded and updated. I've seen on some of these career websites, updated resumes actually show ahead of like older resumes. So just something to think about there. Make sure you're going to career fairs, whether they're virtual or in person. Apply through company websites. I know for us, when somebody applies on our website, that gets filtered based on geographic location. So like anybody who's at a school in Northwest Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, or the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, those all filter into me eventually. And we really do reach out to those people unless we really feel like it's not a fit. We do reach out to people. Indeed, other online websites, people look through that. That's not something that I had thought about when I was in college, but I think if I were doing it again, especially living in a large metropolitan area, you might get on there and see what there is. Just, as many touches as you can get, a little time could really be worth the effort. Networking on campus and elsewhere. So be part of groups, get to know your professors, get to know the professional staff on campus, get business cards, connect on LinkedIn. These are ways that job opportunities can kind of present themselves. And the next one, get out and go to events and activities. You're part of a college that hosts speakers or does workshops. A lot of times those are events that aren't particularly well attended. So you can really be one of a few people that gets special access to recruiters or professionals. Of course, that's more of a non-COVID related. I'm sure there's not a lot of in-person activities, but once those resume, make sure you're doing those. I remember when I was at Purdue, being part of a large university, we had a lot of those opportunities, and it was always amazing to me at some of those events where I'm like, wow, why don't more people go to that? So people spend time and money to set those up, and you never know what opportunities it could bring. Do your research. This is a really important thing. I think it's an area that I probably didn't do nearly as well as I should have when I was in college. If you're about to go into an interview, make sure you do your research on a company. Be ready to ask a question that shows you've done some work. Don't just say, what's the most rewarding thing about you? That's great to ask some of those questions. But if you say, I saw you just added a location in this state, what was the thought process behind that? That shows that you're engaged, and you're probably going to get somebody excited to talk about something specific to their company. But be proactive, and remember, there's nothing to lose. Reach out to somebody on LinkedIn, connect on LinkedIn. I'm really shocked, and I don't know if it's because people don't like me or they don't like the company, whatever the reason. I hand out my business card to a lot of students to say, hey, if you ever want me to look at your resume, if you ever have any questions, very few people reach out, very few. So it doesn't necessarily mean you'll get a job, but if nothing else, it's a professional connection. And, you have to know your place. And, if somebody isn't responsive or doesn't really want to have that conversation, you have to respect that. But I think that a lot of people miss out on those opportunities. And in a time like now, where I think finding a job is going to be a lot more difficult than it was, generally speaking, compared to a year ago, one of these things can make the difference. All right, so the career fair. Sign up and show up. Everybody's working very hard at all the universities I cover in my territory to do these online career fairs. Be part of them. Show up and be engaged. You should talk to plenty of companies. I say be selective because you want to make sure that you're potentially a good fit. But I always say if you're at a career fair for 3 or 4 hours, you should talk to at least 10 companies. And if one's not a fit, that's totally okay. But have your resume ready, have copies if it's an in-person event. If you're doing a virtual event, a lot of these platforms don't allow us as recruiters to just get your resume when we talk. So if that means your resume is ready as a PDF and you can email that to somebody, make sure you have that. Business professional dress, I'm sure you all are familiar with that, but just remember that, even when you're virtual, having that suit and tie or that professional looking outfit is really important. On the topic of virtual career fairs, make sure that your background is like something I always say, keep it boring. You see what's behind me, like nothing right now. But, I was doing an interview with a student who was he was at home, like his parents' house, and he was in like what was clearly like a man cave. There's Bud Light posters and all these things behind him. And, while he was professional in the way he spoke, I think that when you see that behind somebody, it sort of just sets a different tone. And we're in a professional setting, so you want to make sure you do that. But continue to dress professionally and present yourself well. Don't ask for an interview. It's really awkward for recruiters, but I've had people saying, oh, I'd really like to set up an interview. I think that asking to follow up or asking about the next steps is perfectly fine, but please just don't ask for an interview. Like if you have to ask for an interview, that means they probably didn't want to interview. So don't ask for that. And like I said, follow up is really important. Is the same as we do in the sales process. Be like, okay, I'm going to reach out to you in a couple of weeks. Do those. A lot of people don't follow up. So that's, we can talk more in depth about the career fair, but also actually, can we go to the next slide real quick? Okay, so I'm going to kind of get into this real quick. I'm going to talk about your elevator pitch because that was part of my initial agenda. Make sure you have a good little pitch about yourself, less than 30 seconds. Please don't go over 30 seconds. But, I talk about the critical points of the resume. When you're talking about an elevator pitch, hi, my name is Eric Beardmore. I'm a junior studying management at North Central College. I'm involved in the whatever club. I had an internship with this company, and I learned a lot about this. I'm really excited for opportunities in sales and management and wanted to learn a little bit more about your company. Keep it simple. I've had some people with really long elevator pitches, and it just time is critical in these kind of interactions. And so get to the substance of the information and then just get into the natural conversation. But as far as communication and follow-up go, this is a part where I think there's the most need for improvement with college students right now. If you want to be a professional, like get a real job, act like one. And these are mostly things on this list that I find that students struggle with. Number one, answer your phone. I do a lot of calling of job candidates for a lot of different types of job candidates, but certainly with students because I want to see how people can communicate. I'm not far removed from college, but you hear a lot of things from people these days about younger generations. They're good with technology, but the communication is sort of an issue. Being able to communicate effectively verbally on the phone is very, very critical. And it really, you really notice when somebody doesn't do it well. So I would say if I'm going through resume books and I call 50 people in a week, I bet only 10 to 15 answer their phone. And then maybe another 5 will call me back after I leave a message. And I just don't hear back from anybody else, which sort of blows my mind because I try to make sure we qualify who we're talking to. And if a recruiter said, hey, I'd like to talk to you about an opportunity, I know I would have been pretty interested when I was in college. So if you see, during recruiting season, if you're a senior looking for a job, don't just reject every call that's not from your area code. People travel, people move, and they have an area code from a different place or they're from a different part of the country recruiting. So just make sure you answer. If it's a spam call, you can always hang up. But it really could be worth it to get that instant interaction. I mean, not a lot of people have a chance to talk to a recruiter. It can sometimes be a faceless process depending on the company that you work with. But make sure you set up and have a professional voicemail. A lot of people don't set up their voicemail. You really should when you're looking for a job. Make sure you say, hello, this is Eric. I'm sorry I can't take your call right now. Please leave a message and I'll call you back as soon as I can. Don't do, hey, it's Eric, leave a message, right? That's our first impression of you and your voice and the way you communicate. Make sure that voicemail is professional. So have your friends call you and get their feedback. Have your parents call you and say, hey, does this sound professional? So make sure you have that. Emails. This is another big issue. Email is free and it's not that hard. If you're in college, you've grown up using it probably your whole life, more or less. Respond to emails within 24 hours if you're looking for a job. To be honest, a lot of times with me and some other recruiters, if you don't respond within a few days, we just take you off the list. There's a lot of fish in the sea, so to speak, with candidates. There's not as many positions open in the world as there was a year ago. So remember that you want to get ahead of other candidates, and that's a way to do it. Put your email on your cell phone. If you need help, I'm sure you have a friend or somebody who can help you with that. Again, act like a professional. Professionals, they have their email on their cell phone. They can respond to that. But I know one of our sales managers, he's had times where he'll email someone at like 9 in the morning, responding to something, say, hey, I'd like to set up a Zoom meeting for 1 p.m. today. Can you do it? And that's sort of a test of, if this person in an important function, finding a job, isn't on it and isn't engaged, how are they going to be with our customers? Are they going to take 3 days to respond to customer requests if they need a quote on something or having issue with whatever product or service you're selling? Again, act like a professional and prove that you can be a worthy part of an organization. But be engaged and follow up. If somebody says, hey, I'll reach out to you in a couple of weeks regarding an interview, and they don't, reach out. If you do an interview and they say, yeah, we'll let you know by the end of next week if you're moving forward or not, and you get to the end of next week, you maybe don't need to send them an email that day, but a couple business days after, say, hey, you know what, I enjoyed our conversation and didn't hear back. I did that with CED, and I ended up getting a job. So, you need to hold the recruiters accountable from that standpoint. I always try to make sure that we're moving people through the process fairly quickly, whether it's a yes or a no. So, be engaged with that, take ownership of that. If you're taking that time to have conversations and do an interview, especially if you're going somewhere else for an interview, make sure you follow up. So that sort of summarizes what I was going to say about that. We can move to the next slide here. So we've gotten through sort of the substance of the presentation, but just to do some final thoughts. The recruiting process is not an easy one. You are not a good fit for a lot of companies. And I think that was a really tough thing. I did a lot of job interviews and got a lot of no's, maybe some that I went to the final round interview, and that can be really disappointing. But remember that, you have to be yourself. Don't just settle for your first job. Now you also, you have to, it goes both ways. You can't be super picky and demand the perfect job in the perfect location with the perfect salary. But, don't just take your first offer or feel like you're never going to have any opportunities. And make sure that it feels right. You're working with a company that you're comfortable with. But really, final thoughts, make sure your resume is ready. If your resume is bad, it's going to really hurt your chances of getting the job that you want. Be responsive, whether you're interested or not. So I'll send out emails sometimes saying, hey, I saw your resume, thought you might be a good fit. I'd like to set up a brief conversation. Let me know when you're available. A lot of people don't respond to those. I think it's nice to, some recruiters will send you 3 emails if you don't respond. Some might call you. Just send them an email back saying, hey, I really appreciate you reaching out, but I've actually already accepted the full-time offer. I wish you the best as you look for job candidates. That's great. So just make sure you're responsive, and don't be afraid to explore new companies. I never had heard of CED. Maybe you've heard of the company that you're going to work for someday, but know that there's a lot of good jobs out there, but there's a lot of companies you really don't know a lot about or haven't heard of. So I hope that what I've said has been helpful. I have on the next slide, I have my contact information. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or send me an email. We also have our CED Careers website. If you're interested in learning about our training programs and about our company and our industry, there's a lot of good information on there. You can also indicate interest in our programs, or that'll filter to me anyway. So thank you so much for your time. If there are any questions that I can answer, I would be happy to do that, but I have appreciated being part of this. And I actually have had a couple of North Central or former North Central students working for me, and they've been both excellent. So we're developing a little bit of a pipeline, and we're looking to hire some more people from North Central.